Morning guys, Dave Canterbury at the Pathfinder School. Back out here with another video in our Witchery of Archery series. And what I thought I'd do today is start off with the basics, because I have a lot of guys ask me questions about archery and how to shoot bows and things like that. So I thought what we'd do today is we'd start off with the very basic concepts of archery, talk about the components of our bow, how our bow's set up right or wrong, and then what proper form we need to shoot our bow correctly. So first of all, let's talk about the bow. This is a longbow. This is made by Two Tracks Bow Company out of Michigan, and it is a reflex deflex, which means that the limbs curve a little bit this direction so that it stores more energy. It's not just a straight longbow. It's got bamboo limbs covered in fiberglass with a maple core and some black walnut in here. This portion of the bow is called the belly of the bow. This portion is called the back of the bow. Your shelf is where your arrow rests, and when you're shooting a traditional bow, you're basically shooting your arrow off the shelf. In other words, there's no artificial rest for your arrow on here like on a compound bow. You basically just have a piece of felt laying right on the shelf itself, and that's what your arrow lays on top of. The riser is everything between the limbs basically. This part is considered the riser. The brace height is the distance from your shelf to your string, and generally speaking you want that to be about, on a longbow or a reflex deflex, you want that to be about the distance from the bottom of your fist to the top of your thumb. That will give you the best accuracy and will also keep it from slapping your arm so much. Okay. Now, once we talk about the basic components, then we also have down here, we have the tips, the limb tips, and we have our string nocks. On this bow we have what's called a nocking point, which is just basically a piece of brass wrapped around that string. And the way you want to set that up is really, you want your arrow to lay on the shelf, and when you knock it under that knock point, you want it to be setting about 1/8 of an inch off center high, which means your arrow's canted downward just a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch. That'll give you the best starting arrow flight, and you can adjust that depending on your aim point and things like that down the road. But for right now, if you start with that about 1/8 of an inch high, you'll be in pretty good shape. If you don't have something you can crimp on there, you can just wrap some extra string around it where the serving is, and the serving is this protective wrapping around the string itself, and then you have string silencers on here to cut down on the vibration of the string. These are made out of felt. You can make them out of wool. You can, or this is felted wool. You can make them out of straight wool. You can make them out of a lot of things. They sell commercial string silencers if you want to use them, but they're good if you're hunting with the bow. You don't need them if you're not hunting. Now let's talk about arrow grip. There's two different standard methods of arrow grip. One of them is called 3 fingers under, which means you are putting 3 fingers underneath the knock point and pulling the arrow back. The other one is called split, which is 1 finger over the top, 2 fingers below. I shoot split finger. Ira shoots 3 fingers under. I know guys that shoot both. Whatever works for you is what's best. Okay? You can try both. I've always shot split finger. Now, let's talk about drawing the bow. When you draw the bow, there's several different types of draws. So let's reposition the camera and we'll talk about that. Okay, the two main types of draw that you have are what's called the swing draw, which means that your bow is in a downward position. As you bring it up, you're drawing the bow at the same time. It's a simultaneous motion. Then you have what's called the push-pull draw, which basically you bring the bow up and you push out and pull at the same time. That's a push-pull draw. I generally, when I'm hunting or target shooting, use a swing draw. Most of the great archers used a swing draw in the past. Howard Hill, guys like that, all used a swing draw. Fred Bear used a swing draw. So it's a very effective method to draw your bow. Now, the most important thing to understand about shooting a bow is your anchor point. And your anchor point is where you're going to draw that arrow back to, and that's going to determine how long your arrow really needs to be, because that's your draw length. The way bows are measured in poundage is a certain amount of weight it takes to draw that bow back at a certain draw length. And the standard is 28 inches. Most bows are measured in, this is the pounds of draw at 28 inches. So this bow is measured at 50 pounds at 28 inches. If it's less than 28 inches on my draw, whatever my draw length is, if it's less than 28 inches, the bow is going to be shooting less than 50 pounds. If it's over 28 inches, the bow is going to shoot over 50 pounds. The mathematics is, there to be figured out as far as what that differential is above and beyond 28 inches or below 28 inches, but we won't get into that today. Just suffice it to say, if you're less than 28-inch draw and you've got a 50-pound bow at 28 inches, it's going to be less than 50 pounds. If your draw length is over that 28 inches, it's going to be more than 50 pounds. So we have to pick an anchor point to draw this bow to. And you want to use the same anchor point all the time when you draw that bow. And you also want to keep your elbow straight behind you when you draw that bow. You don't want it up here. You don't want it down here. You want it straight behind you. And you want to point your shoulder at the target. So you want to stand this direction with the target off to your shoulder so that when you bring that bow up and draw it, your shoulder is pointed at the target, your hand is pointed at the target. You're basically pointing your fist at the target as you're drawing the bow. And if you get that thing anchored in the same place every time, your arrow will begin to go to the place you're looking every time. But what you have to remember is you've got to keep a constant anchor point. You can't anchor it once down here, once up here, once up in here, once over here. It's got to be in the same spot every time on your anchor point. I choose the corner of my mouth because it's really easy to figure out when I'm at full draw because my finger touches the corner of my mouth, and that's when I'm ready to release. Now, you can snap shoot a bow, which means you just bring it up and you let it go. And that's pretty much how I shoot. I bring it up, as soon as I hit anchor, I let go. I trust my eyes to do the rest. If you can hold that bow at draw, then you can concentrate for a minute. And a lot of tournament shooters, especially in the traditional archery, like to be able to do that because snap shooting is not as accurate as being able to hold that bow at draw. A lot of people want to shoot bows that are way too heavy. Remember that if you're going to hunt with that bow, you should be able to hold that bow at full draw for at least 10 seconds. Because once you draw that bow, if you're ground hunting and a deer comes in or a turkey comes in and you get that bow to full draw and he moves and you don't have an ethical shot, then you may have to hold that draw until he moves back to a position where you can get a shot, because as soon as you let off and he sees you move, he's gone. The game is gone. So you've got to be able to hold that draw. The heavier your bow is, the harder it's going to be to hold that draw. Most states allow 40 pounds of draw weight as a minimum for hunting animals. 40 pounds is plenty to kill anything in North America. 50 pounds is more than enough. I generally will never shoot a bow over 50 pounds because, number one, I don't want to have to try to hold that draw length on a bigger bow, on a heavier bow. Number two, I don't need that much weight. It doesn't take that much weight. So now let's talk about, hunting with longbows for a second. When you're hunting with a longbow, you have to realize that you're not going to be shooting at 50 yards. Your shot is going to be whatever you can shoot arrows at and put 10 arrows in a pie plate. If you can put 10 shots in a pie plate, that's the size of a deer's vitals, at a certain distance, that's your minimum safe distance for an ethical shot, or maximum safe distance for an ethical shot, I should say. So if I can shoot 10 arrows out of 10 arrows into a pie plate at 15 yards, but when I move back to 20, one of those arrows goes off the pie plate, then 15 yards is the maximum distance I'm going to be to ethically shoot an animal. So I've got to get close. 20 yards is probably an outside shot, 25 yards, very outside shot for most longbow hunters. But it's not that hard to get game close. People don't realize unless they hunt that you can get a deer to come very close to you, especially if you're not out trophy hunting for the biggest buck in the woods. If you're trying to fill the freezer and be self-reliant, you can get a doe to walk within 10 yards of you so easy, it's not even funny. The trick is to get that bow drawn and get the shot off before that doe spooks. But as far as sitting still and waiting for them to come to you, you can get a doe to come to you in an ambush point on a trail or whatever the case may be within 10 yards, no problem. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't, because if they tell you that, they're not a very good hunter or they don't hunt at all, one of the two. It's very easy to get close to game, but the good thing about hunting with a longbow is it forces you to get close to game, so it forces you to become better at getting inside that animal's inner circle and giving them a chance to get away. And that's what I like about bow hunting so much and shotgun hunting over long distance rifle hunting and things like that, because the distance that you have to get to the animal is much closer, and I believe that you're giving that animal much more respect by killing him up close and personal than by being 200 yards away and shooting him across a ridge with a high-powered rifle, where he has no clue that you're there and has no chance to live if you're a very good shot. Okay, off my soapbox, back to shooting bows. So, what we have to remember is, if we're going to use a swing draw, shoulder to the target, bring it up, anchor in the corner of our mouth, and then let go. Same anchor every time we hit that anchor point. Every time we draw that bow, we're going to hit that anchor point, okay? That's important to remember. Mechanics, 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 repetition, repetition, repetition. Elbow, same spot, anchor point, same spot, bow, same spot. I like it when my string actually touches the side of my nose a little bit when I'm getting ready to shoot my bow. Then I know I've got solid straight alignment and my eyes are looking at the target, okay? Now, let's talk about left eye, right eye dominant for a minute real quick, okay? If you are left eye dominant, you need to be shooting a bow left-handed. If you're right eye dominant, you should be shooting a bow right-handed. So, back to our mechanics. Now, people ask me, how do I practice my archery? Well, what I tell people most of the time, and what I learned from one of my mentors in archery, Steve Snyder, is that the first thing you do is get yourself a block target and cover that thing up with a black plastic bag. That way you're not looking at bullseyes, you're not looking at anything. And get yourself about 5-6 yards from that target and just start pulling arrows and shooting them. And chase the last knock. Pull it, shoot it, pull it, shoot it, until all your arrows are grouping in the center of that target. At that point, back up to 10 yards. Do the same thing. When you're getting a good solid, 2-inch group, something like that, in that target, back up to 15 yards. When you get that good solid 2-inch group, back up to 20 yards and do the same thing. At that point, you're ready to pull the bag off the target and try to start shooting something that you're looking at. Or you can just paint a circle on that trash bag. But targets that have big circles all over them and deer vitals and turkey heads and all of that business only confuse you. You want to be able to look at that target and look at one spot on that target that's as small as you can possibly get it. It goes back to the old saying, aim small, miss small. If I shoot one arrow into that target at the center and I'm aiming at that little bitty knock as the next arrow I'm shooting, then I'm aiming small. If I've got a big circle on that target or a big vital area for a deer and I'm looking at that whole vital area every time I shoot my arrows, I'm never going to get a good grouping. And I'm never going to get muscle memory to get a good grouping every time I shoot. So let's get back 5 yards from this thing and shoot, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, now before we start shooting multiple arrows, what we want to do is we want to shoot one arrow at a time. And the reason we want to do that is because I don't want to get used to aiming at other arrows right off the bat. I want to see where my arrows are landing naturally. So I'm just looking at the center of the bag, and there's really nothing there to look at. And that's the point of covering that bag with a trash can, covering that with a trash bag to begin with, is there's nothing for me to aim at. So I'm looking at that whole square, and I'm trying to put arrows in the center of that square, one at a time. If I shoot multiple arrows, I'm going to be tricking myself into looking at the last arrow, and I don't want to do that yet. I want to make sure that my arrows are hitting in the center before I do that. So I'm going to shoot one, pull it, shoot one, pull it. Now once those arrows are hitting in the same place about every time, or close, then I'm ready to start shooting multiple arrows. Okay, we'll shoot one more here. Okay, all three of those arrows were within, I'm going to say, 2 inches at the most of each other. So now we're going to shoot a group of arrows. Okay, one more thing real fast, guys, before we start shooting. Your arrow, if you're shooting fletchings, which means you've got feathers on there, vanes means they're plastic. Anytime you're shooting off the shelf with a traditional bow, you really want to be shooting feathers and not vanes. And the reason for that is that the feathers can compress when they go by the bow. In other words, when this travels past this bow, like this, those feathers can compress. Vanes are not going to do that. That's why most compound bows have a raised or elevated arrow rest on them, because the vanes will not compress. So you've got usually one feather that's different than the other two on a 3-feathered arrow, and that's called the cock feather. And it always goes to the outside. So when I nock my arrow, I have 2 feathers here and the cock feathers out, so that when it travels past my shelf, those 2 arrows are pretty flat, and this one's on the outside. If I put it like this, it's forcing this arrow to compress this feather all the way across there when it doesn't need to, and sometimes that'll make it kick out a little bit on you. So you really want to make sure that you've got your cock feather on the outside every time you get ready to shoot that bow. And remember, elbow toward the target, or excuse me, shoulder toward the target. Anchor every time. Same spot every time. Anchor. Okay? That's a little bit high. That's okay for me though, because I'm close. So I'm not worried about that. Okay? That arrow's right on top of it, or close to it. Okay, that one hit the other arrow. Might have busted a knock, actually. I saw something fly. I hope it was styrofoam. Okay. Let's zoom in on those a little bit. I'm going to have to move the camera just a shade here to do that. Okay, you can see those red feathers, so you know where those arrows are at. Okay guys, so here's our 4 arrows, and I was right. Okay, you see this one right here has got the knock shot completely off of it. That means that this arrow hit this knock just like this and blew it completely out. So it was a William Tell basically. But now I'm down an arrow, so that's the way life goes. All right. Okay guys, well I appreciate you joining me today on this second part of our Witchery of Archery series. We're getting into archery mechanics and actually beginning to shoot our bow. We covered a lot of ground today, and we're going to come back and revisit some things on the next part of this series, as well as expand on what we're doing so that we can start honing in our skills on how to shoot not only targets in 3Ds, but also live animals in the woods. I appreciate you joining me for this video. I thank you for everything you do for me, for my school, for my family, for my friends, my sponsors, and my affiliates. I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.